Address the issue of free trade, as it were. Now, we have what we're told is going to be an agreement with U.S. and China, but it has certain quotas about agriculture and stuff. It doesn't feel much like free trade. And we have Pat Toomey of the Senate actually coming out and saying, I've got some real problems with the USMCA, that successor to NAFTA, because it restricts trade in a lot of ways. Where is the Republican Party on this issue now?
Well, I think it's a bigger question is not the party, it's where President Trump's taken the party. As you mentioned in your introduction, conservatives have historically been for free trade, but this president isn't all that conservative in a lot of areas. For example, he's run up the deficit more in 3 years than any president in our history, and he doesn't seem to believe in international alliances, both of which are at the core of a conservative philosophy. And in the area of trade, there is the issue of him picking winners and losers. He literally picks certain segments of our economy and says, well, I'm going to make you a winner. And other segments of our economy, he says, well, I really don't like you or you don't like me, so you're going to be a loser. And these trade negotiations have fallen into that category. And in my opinion, not a lot has been accomplished. And what has been accomplished, except for USMCA, which I do support, but with the Chinese, has been marginal compared to the harm it's created relative to the American consumer and American business trying to be engaged in international trade.
But Senator, is this the sheer force of will of President Trump, or was he addressing a broader issue that people, at least a lot of people across the country, were open to curtailing free trade because globalization they see didn't work that well for them?
Yeah, I think he's a populist president, and populism basically has to have an enemy, and the enemy was free trade for a lot of folks. But the rising economy has been driven in large part by trade. And as you curtail trade, you have an economy that usually contracts. Conservatives genuinely believe, or I think conservatives genuinely believe, that the more open the markets are, the better we're going to be because our nation is more entrepreneurial, it's more aggressive, and we're better at it than other nations. The Chinese are a legitimate competitor, and they do clearly manipulate and have manipulated their currency, and they also take advantage of our intellectual property. But so far, most of the agreements which have been discussed, even though they've talked about those two issues, have not reached any agreement on those issues. And this most recent agreement with the Chinese was an agreement to agree, or look to an agreement to consider to agree. And so until there's actual payoff, I don't think we're going to get very far. And you got to remember, the Chinese government is not a democracy. They don't think in terms of four-year elections. They think in terms of decades, because that's how long they've been there and that's how long they expect to be there. So in negotiating with them, you got a little bigger lift than if you think you're going to negotiate with, say, the Europeans.